Welcome back, all you good people, to another episode of Diagnosing Movie Characters. I'm Brad, a board-certified psychiatric nurse practitioner, and today we're going to be looking at the TV character George Costanza, one of my favorites, played by Jason Alexander from the 90s hit sitcom Seinfeld. Today we're going to look at him and decide whether or not he could be diagnosed with schizophrenia, based on one episode where he appears to be hearing voices. We're going to look into that and make a diagnosis. So in this scene, George's fiancée Susan has just moved in with him, and she's moved in her doll collection. And George is about to meet the infamous doll. Just click play on that.
Oh, I put up my doll collection.
Oh my God. What is that?
What is it?
Doll just looks exactly like his mother,
This
Estelle.
doll looks like my mother.
George, it's a doll.
I know it's a doll, but it looks like my mother.
Oh, get out of here.
This is just a picture of Estelle Harris next to the doll, and showing what a good job they did of making the doll look just like George's mother in the show. So the DSM-5 criteria for schizophrenia: patient must have one of these top three. That's delusions, hallucinations, or disorganized speech, and then a total of 2 of all of the above or more. Just one of them has to be the top 3. So delusions, that's thinking that things aren't as they are. Hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that other people don't see or hear or feel or smell, actually. Disorganized speech, grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, and then negative symptoms. So all of these ones are considered positive symptoms, and then negative symptoms, they list diminished emotional expression or avolition. The main difference between positive and negative symptoms are that positive symptoms are something you're going to see with someone that you wouldn't see with someone else, and then negative symptoms are things that you might not see in this person that you would expect to see. So again, we call it a flat affect when they have a diminished emotional expression, and you see that a lot in people who are, they can also have that if they're severely depressed, but people with schizophrenia often will have diminished emotional expression. And then 2 or more of these for over a month. And then some of these signs must persist for at least 6 months to be considered a diagnosis for schizophrenia. This scene,
What is this thing doing here?
she has the doll in bed with her,
Sleep with my
and
dolls
they're
when I was
making
a
out.
little girl.
George
I'm
is not
sorry,
impressed.
I can't do this.
I can't say that there's anything
I feel like I'm
abnormal
in
about
bed with my
that.
mother.
But this part's pretty funny.
Georgie,
Here we have George in the restaurant
with your hand.
talking and reacting to his
Why do you eat so
doll.
fast? You can't even taste it.
Don't tell me how to eat.
You're wearing that shirt? You've had it for 5
Look at his facial
years
expressions.
already. Why don't you buy a new shirt?
'Cause I like this one.
So he's reacting perfectly. Jason Alexander does a wonderful job in this scene. And look at even how he carries the doll. So we call that reacting to internal stimuli. When a person is either hearing voices or seeing things, and you might see them kind of glancing off to the side, just like we often do if someone was actually talking to us from the side. We tend to look to them. So someone with schizophrenia potentially would be, you could have seen someone sitting on a park bench, and they're either talking to what you would say is talking to themselves, or in some cases they don't talk, but they are listening and potentially bothered by these voices that they're hearing, and so they be maybe looking as the person in their head is speaking to them. In this scene, George's dad comes over and spots the doll and immediately starts interacting with it. It's pretty funny. I'll show the scene and then have a little bit to say afterwards.
Oh, stop bothering everybody with that picture. It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous? I'll show you ridiculous.
Jerry Stiller is hilarious.
There! Now, what have you got to say for yourself?
I told you it looked like that.
So that's pretty funny. Interestingly enough, so schizophrenia occurs in about 1% of the population. And if you have a parent or sibling that has schizophrenia, that risk goes up to 10%, so 10 times higher. So that is relevant in this scene, that his father also had this reaction to the doll. So here we are looking at our criteria for schizophrenia by the DSM-5. And when we look at these criteria, George really only appears to be having hallucinations. So he's hearing his mother speaking to him through the doll. And so we call those audio hallucinations. Interestingly enough, they are kind of accurate. A lot of times, some of these hallucinations can be critical, like if in the restaurant scene where George was reacting as the doll was telling him that he needed a new shirt, and some other derogatory statements. But beyond that, George acts pretty normally. And then when it comes to the bottom, he has to have one of the first three, but then they have to persist. So this has to last for most of a month. It doesn't appear that this episode is covering much more than a week, if that. And then some of the symptoms and signs need to persist for 6 months. So I certainly wouldn't be diagnosing George with schizophrenia at this time. So some of you might be curious as to why George was having those audio hallucinations of a verbal nature. You could hear his mother talking to him. I found a 2016 study that was published in Consciousness and Cognition, and they talked about anxiety triggering verbal hallucinations and also shaping their content. It's an interesting paper. I'm not going to go too far into it, except to say that they, I agree that anxiety could cause someone to have some hallucinations, and in this case, George was very anxious. He didn't really want to get married. There's multiple episodes about that. Moving in together with his fiance, and then this doll showing up that looks exactly like his mother. Certainly, there's a lot of anxiety involved there, and so this could be an anxiety-induced hallucination that is temporary. His dad obviously ripped the head off the doll at the end of the episode, so that'll be the end of that. I don't imagine they'll go to much effort to fix it. So anyway, thank you all for watching the whole episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Diagnosing Movie Characters.